Live from SABC studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this week's last edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvoko, and on the show this evening,
we are fighting for your kids, and you're pushing me off my campus.
These are criminals.
Registered students.
ugly scenes as protests intensify at higher education institutions. We bring together leaders of the country's foremost student political formations for a roundtable discussion on how demands can possibly be met, but without further risking life, limb, and property. The Watchdog starts now. Violence broke out at Wits University in Johannesburg this afternoon as campus security faced off with protesting students after they stormed one of the gates on campus. The demand is for students who owe 150,000 rands or less in historical debt to be allowed to register for this academic year and not be excluded. They are also demanding that the National Student Financial Aid Scheme increased accommodation allowance, which it has kept at 45,000 rands. There's also a 10,000 rands upfront fee for residents to be waived. Sensitive viewers are advised of the following disturbing visuals.
Students are trying to get in. We are fighting for your kids, and you're pushing me off my campus.
These are criminals.
Registered students. We are fighting for your kids. That was where students aligned to the EFF Student Command had been protesting this morning, blocking off the entrance, sitting on in front of the entrance, not allowing cars to come in and out of the premises here at Wits University. That's when the scuffle broke out between the security here at the university as well as the protesting students. The protection service, while they remain on the other side of the gate, these students are adamant that they want to go in here, and they're not going to allow the security to prevent them from doing that. That is the current situation at this stage.
This is the deadlock we've been speaking about. The university, Wits University is saying now they won't open the door. So Wits likes killing people. In 2021, someone died because of Wits' arrogance. So right now, Wits is saying they'd rather be a stampede, they'd rather be someone being injured other than them opening.
If they will want to hire 10,000 bouncers, then 10,000 students will come. If they hire 40,000 bouncers, 40,000 students will come. This fight is bigger than Wits. This fight is a fight. That's why I'm even calling, I'm pleading to the rest of the South Africans to say that our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters go to the streets.
I think they might be inside the premises.
And then students marched through the Braamfontein CBD and managed to gain entrance at one of the gates and forced their way.
The situation extremely dangerous right now as more stones are being thrown. Take a look at these live pictures from Wits University. It's a bit volatile at this stage. More stones being thrown. We must apologize to our viewers. There is some blood that is here on the floor, indicating that there are some people who have gotten hurt here. This is where the scuffle had taken place, and this is where some of the stones had been flung from. This is where the security services were. But we must apologize to sensitive viewers for showing this blood, but this is as a result of the altercation that took place here between the security services as well as the protesting students. This is the first time that police have been brought in to try and, I guess, bring the situation to calm. Have you managed to calm the situation?
We have managed to calm the situation. Now I've already spoken to the police that we will control, everything will get under control.
Wits University is committed to trying to support students as far as possible, and this is why we're trying to address some of the national issues with which we live after so many years. We've showed you strength in the face of student protests, but we condemn the acts of intimidation and the destruction of property.
This as students have vowed to continue with the protest action. Griselda Lewis, SABC News at Wits University in Johannesburg.
In Cape Town, more than 90 students from the Cape Peninsula University of Technology who have been sleeping in hallways and on campus grounds are appealing for intervention. They claim they have been accepted for the academic year but have not yet had access to student accommodation.
Cell phone footage showing male and female students sleeping in the university's hallways. These students say they are faced with a myriad of issues with no access to accommodation, food, and adequate ablution facilities. Some are stranded and camping outside the campus with their luggage.
No human being can live in such a condition. We sleep on tiled floors. No member has come to make means of us sleeping in a better condition. It's been 5 days since we're here. We can't shower. The only place where we think we can have a little wipe ourselves to at least not smell that bad is by the bathroom sink.
It was very bad. It was very cold. We were like a lot of girls in there. It was so dramatic in a way that it was my first day. We had to sleep like in towels. I don't have like things to like blankets or something. I had to share with someone else. We were like 6 in one blanket. It's like very bad. In the morning we had to go take some bath in the toilets. We are being chased out by those cleaners and stuff.
I leave like the student center or where we are currently sleeping now. People might come, like we do not know when we will be placed because no one is being placed at the moment. They're giving us empty promises. So I can't attend any classes. We all have assignments that are due, but we can't do anything about it.
The university, with a capacity of over 33,000 students, says it accommodates over 43% of the students in its residences. The institution says after conducting a vetting process, it found that most of the students had partially applied or not at all, and some were not eligible for accommodation.
Staff in the Housing and Student Affairs departments have worked through weekends and late into the night over the past few weeks to process hundreds of walk-ins who arrived at our District 6 campus having not made any application for study nor accommodation. These students have been vetted and the following scenarios were found to be the case. Most had partially applied or not at all. Where possible, we have placed students who were eligible. A large number of the walk-ins were senior former students who were not eligible for campus housing on account of failing or living within the 60-kilometer radius of campus.
Students' organizations have appealed to the university to place the learners.
Mostly the first-year students that are coming from different provinces, because in hope of when they go to the rest department, they are going to get placement, you know. So majority of them, let's say if there are 90, 80 of them are first-year students, and the 10 of them are returning students, and returning students exams are starting next week. That's why they are here, and most exams are on campus.
The affected students remain in the hallways and on the grounds of the institution. Thule Joga, SABC News, Cape Peninsula University of Technology.
After the break, I'm in conversation with leaders of the country's foremost student political formations on Gowe. A rocky start for the 2023 school university year as universities across the country are dealing with student protests. A number of issues relating to funding, registration, security and access to accommodation are at the heart of the problem in various higher learning institutions throughout the country. Well, joining me I'm joined on the line by leaders from SASCO. From SASCO, we're joined by Leonard Malesa, and from DASO, we have its national chair, Sandiso Buthelezi, and we also have the EFF's Student Command's Legal and Transformation Officer, and that is Vezinhlanhla Smelana, who is the president. Let me do that again. I have Vezinhlanhla Smelane, who is SASCO's president, and Leonard Malesa is DASO's national chair, and Sandiso Buthelezi is the legal and transformation officer for the EFF's Student Command. Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks very much for your time.
Good evening to you, Prabhu, and good evening to our viewers at home.
In the insert we played earlier, Sandiso, your comrade was saying this fight is bigger than Wits. Expand on that for us.
No, good evening, Babu Voyo, and greetings to the viewers at home. Yeah, we are here again on this platform. When we came here last time, we told you that there is a crisis in the higher education sector, both in the universities and the TVET colleges in South Africa. So under the Minister of Higher Education, Minister Blame Zimana, we anticipated all of this crisis coming from NSFAS and the department itself. The universities are very arrogant towards the structures and very dismissive towards the students' issues. Now, it's not a surprise that Wits already is undergoing protest, and it's the struggle we are supporting as the EFF Students Command, and we encourage comrades to intensify the struggle in that campus. Also, we are told that there are so many issues, particularly coming from NSFAS in relation to paying of accommodation, because NSFAS only gives 45,000 per annum, yet the university demands 51,000. So those are the issues at hand, and some of the issues we are told that the university does not adhere to the call of the SRC and the EFF Students Command to say all those students who have outstanding fees of less than 150,000, the SRC and the Students Command have called on to say all of those students must be allowed to be registered and unblocked and be given accommodation. So the university is not adhering to such a call. So that's why we are calling our comrades to continue with the struggle. But also, it's not only Wits that is on shutdown. So many other institutions in duty, there are issues to a point where some of the students have been arrested. In the UKZN, the same issues. Some of the students are still in custody. So it's a war brought to us by the minister and these arrogant universities, which does not allow students to be unblocked and to go for education. Mr. Vuyo, to us, education is liberation. Education is a weapon, particularly at the hands of an African child. The youth in South Africa remains unemployed. So the youth are going all out to seek for education. So the doors of learning must be opened. So for us to get a quality education, so we must push. We don't have any other option other than to go on the street and fight and demand. So simply think, just unblock the students in Wits and just give students accommodation so that everything can be normal. But we cannot act normal when the conditions are dire, when the conditions are unfavorable for our students. So that is the plight of what's happening in Wits. By the way, even in UJ, they are protesting because there is no water on campus. So there are so many issues. That's why we encourage our writers and structures to continue with this struggle.
Leonard, I don't know if your organization supports the protests or not. You can tell us what your position is first, perhaps.
No, thank you very much for your, and good evening to the viewers back at home. Look, honestly speaking, these issues of finding crisis institutional filing did not emerge overnight. the ongoing shutdowns have once proved that the funding model that the higher education is using, it's failing. Remember 2017, the students were promised fee-free higher education. Today, as we're sitting here, the poor of the poorest are the same students that are denied access to education. They are the same students that are financially excluded. They are the same students that are denied accommodation. So we cannot blame students when we take these issues to the street, because simply the higher education sector does not take student issues serious. This issue of shutdowns, they didn't start this year or last year. Each and every year there has been shutdowns. Weeks ago, Nelson Mandela University students took it to the street. As I'm speaking to you, there was a student that had to sleep with another student so that that student can be able to be accommodated. You know, the university is very ignorant. As we are speaking, there is issues of shuttles in a university. Their students are being treated like a high school. So as it does so, we have always made sure that we rally behind students. So if the university and the higher education complain, they do not come into a space that they make us understand and come with solutions towards these issues. You must remember, these students are denied financial institution not because they failed. They did not fail. These are the same students that performed well academically. But you find that the administration of NSFAS is poor. The administration of the university is the one that is affecting the funding of certain students. There are many students now, as I'm speaking to you, who performed academically well, but they do not have access to education. They do not have accommodation as we speak. So these are the issues that the university management and higher education sector does not take them serious. And as students, we are being affected on the ground. So we are forced to take issues to the streets so at least the university can come to play and listen to the issues that we have been having as students.
You know, it's a very interesting Vincent Landler, because the last time, you know, you guys were here on the program, you in particular was here in studio, I asked whether there had been a consultation, because if one takes the issue of, you know, the cap, for example, that NSFAS has on accommodation of 45,000 rands, and from what students have been telling us over the past a couple of days, is that, I mean, they could be charged up to 85,000 rands or more at certain universities or in certain instances. Now, if that consultation had been done, you know, properly, one would imagine that such issues would have been foreseen, and a position, whatever position would have been taken, it would have taken into account what actually pertains at universities.
Thank you very much, Pravuyo. And I think on that point of keeping of NSFAS, we have said as an organization that at some point there has to be some kind of a capping when it's come to how much does a student get from accommodation. But at the same time, when they are doing that process of checking whether how much should be the capping, they must be mindful that not all universities and TVET colleges are situated in an area where 45,000 can be enough. There are some universities who are in urban areas. And in urban areas, there are issues of rates that are involved, electricity and water and everything. So when you are dealing with the process, we must be mindful of that reality that in some places, there must be some kind of flexibility by NSFAS. Because one thing that you must not accept is that we would have some people who are going to, like in the form of landlords, who are going to take advantage of the money that from NSFAS. Remember that money from NSFAS is taxpayers' money. How the money is spent is very much important. Like the money must be spent in the correct way. But at the same time, we cannot allow a private owner, private people who are in business for accommodation to increase prices. But at the same time, NSFAS must be able to be flexible to see, okay, in this case, we understand that there are issues of rate and everything. So this is the amount that we think can be suitable for this particular accommodation. When you go to Mlazi in Durban, The situation is different because you'll find that it's in a township environment, the accommodation is less expensive compared to those who are staying in town. So in our view as a student organization, and even when these consultations were made, we have said clearly that we don't have a problem with capping. We have to cap at some point, but you must be mindful of places where there is a need for you to be able to increase the prices, because geographical location also impacts in terms of how much the accommodation can cost. But another thing that we think is important, Bravo, is that students' accommodation, government must find a way to ensure that there is a subsidy for that student accommodation, because we can't say a student stays in a residence, pays the exact amount of someone who works and stays in that particular environment. So we do believe that there must be a subsidy in terms of people who are involved in student accommodation, because we as students, and NSFAS is not here to make to ensure that there are more business people who are prospering, but NSFAS is here to assist students. So at the same time, there must be some kind of an understanding to say, what is it that NSFAS is responsible for? NSFAS is responsible to assist the need of our students, and at the same time, landlords who are in business, they must also have that understanding. And again, they must not lose profit because they're in business. Hence, we are saying for future purposes, I think government must begin to look into a situation where people who are in business, landlords, there must be some kind of an assistance from our own government. As we speak, Bravulio, our comrades there from Wits, yesterday we were with the president. We've got the briefing from now. The entire SRC has been suspended, and we're not going to keep quiet as an organization that our students, our comrades are being suspended. All of them are suspended. There is no SRC. They are suspended on the basis that they're fighting for proper issues. For instance, the issue of 550,000 that they must pay 50% before they register. Remember, Bravo, if you remember when we were the interview,
we are going to get into that one. I just wanted to finish the point on the issue of accommodation for a second, Vezintlantla, if you allow me. But before we move to another issue, I just wanted to ask Leonard whether, from what Vezintlantla was saying about the role of NSFAS and its ability to be able to, take into account that situations differ. From where you guys sit, is NSFAS, does NSFAS have the capacity to actually make such determinations from how you understand it, the way it functions, but students' experiences, everything that goes with it? Do they have that ability and capacity to be able to make such determinations? And we're talking narrowly about accommodation now.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Look, there is a reason why, as it does, we've always called for a decentralization of NSFAS, to say each and every institution of higher learning must have NSFAS offices in that university. People who are in Cape Town currently, I can tell you, they do not understand the issues that are faced in the Nelson Mandela University. They do not understand the dynamics of UKZN. So the reason we've been calling for decentralization of NSFAS is because when these people of NSFAS are here in this area of Nelson Mandela Bay, they are able to understand how the environment operates. Understand? So they will be able to understand that, okay, man, we cannot cap accommodation to 45%, 45,000. So compared to a University of Cape Town. So we have always called for decentralization of NSFAS, so that when NSFAS is in Cape Town or in UKZN or in Joburg, in that university, they are able to understand that the accommodations around Wits, they are not the same accommodations as in UKZN or at Nelson Mandela University. So ours was always to say, no, the solution here is to make sure that we decentralize NSFAS. Then student leaders will engage with management and NSFAS office in that university to say, how then do we propose the budget for accommodation of this area? Understand? So there is no solution other than that, because people who are sitting in Cape Town, they don't understand what students are facing in Limpopo, understand? So they don't understand what students are facing there in CPUT and other universities. So let's decentralize NSFAS so that everyone in each university understand the dynamics around their area. Thank you very much.
Sandy, so what is your understanding of why there seems to be a disjuncture between, how NSFAS approaches this thing and its understanding of what is, sufficient versus the situation on the ground and perhaps the regional and other dynamics that Leonard has just spoken about?
Yeah, NSFAS must be decentralized to all institutions of higher learning, especially in campuses, because NSFAS is an institution that works in Department of Education and Training. So they do not understand these issues and they are forever disorganized, and there is high level of maladministration in that sector. So the Department of Higher Education needs to look at that, because they even have a very bad communication between the universities and the NSFAS. Now, in terms of the fees, the university tuition fees and accommodation fees are very exorbitant. So to some students, particularly the self-paying students, they could not afford accommodation fees. So NSFAS must be decentralized and must be given enough budget to be able to fund all of these students. And the issue of maladministration cannot be resolved now. It has been a long addressed and long-standing issue, and which is not addressed as we speak now. So when we speak about historical debt, the student debts and everything, so it's not coherent, it's not standing. Now, the accommodation remains a crisis. I tell you, Mr. Mvoko, now that in the UKZN, as we are speaking, we were saying last week, the SRC has been suspended in another campus, Etu. The SRC is currently under custody in prison in Westville. So they are arrested for demanding accommodation. In duty, over 4,000 students are not allocated, yet the university has assumed with its operations and started their academic calendar. So those are the issues. But the media really must be able to extend its eye and its coverage to the previously disadvantaged institutions, even in Tibet colleges, so that the people of South Africa can see that when the students command and the students take it to the street, in confrontation in all of these issues, the people of South Africa must be able to see what's happening in the entire country. So as we speak now, the campuses have become a war zone, particularly in KZN, it's a crime scene. Campuses are militarized in demand of just accommodation for students. You see in CPUT, students now are packed together in lecture halls. Students in KZN, students in Limpopo, they sleep in classes, in lecture halls. So we can't have such a situation. So there is a need for accommodation, and it's simple in other institutions because you have to contract and go and outsource accommodation. There are buildings and they are vacant in many institutions. Now we have so many casualties upon this militarization of campus because the universities, instead of resolving these issues, what they do, they opt for calling law enforcement on campuses. Now we have students, there are so many casualties. Students do not have eyes. In Etu, in the protest last week, student was shot in the eye. So the eye has been removed. In the UKZN Howard again, in duty, students are arrested. So even in other cases, in the worst case scenario, you will remember in 2019, when duty had a protest, the university responded by taking an armed response and killed him. Till date, we do not have such justice. So you can see the failure of NSFAS, Department of Education, and these arrogant universities to solve just minor issues, just providing accommodation. Because there is money given to students by NSFAS. The university must go and outsource the accommodation and give it to our students. So we are sitting here and many students are suspended. Many of them, they are expelled. So we are creating a crisis. Students went to the university to get employment. to get an education, for them to be employed and change the situation at home for the better. Many of our students come from rural and deep background.
Okay.
They need sense of education.
Okay. Now, obviously, I mean, as Sandy just said, at UKZN says there are people or students or student leaders who have been arrested, which would have everything to do with state law enforcement agencies. You spoke about Wits, the fact that student leaders there have been suspended. I listened earlier in the day to, I think it was the dean of students at Wits, talking about how there are limits to how these things can be done. They do promote freedom of expression, speech and everything, and they respect students' rights to protest, and so on. But that must be done within, certain rules. Where people cross the line, then the law must take its course.
Thanks once again, Prof. Vuyo. In my history of activism in the student movement, what I know is that we have never been violent as students. That is the reality. We have never been violent as students. And again, too, everyone in this country knows that everyone in this country has a right to protest. Now, over the years, what we have been experiencing in higher education, in institute of higher learning, is that institutions, the universities what they've been doing is that they deploy security forces. And when they deploy security forces on campus, these security forces are the ones who provoke our students. Remember, when we are protesting, we are unarmed, we don't have anything. People who are armed are these securities who are deployed by universities. In our history, we have always done protests peaceful. But the moment you begin to shoot with a rubber bullet, it is difficult, because when they explain why they're shooting with a rubber bullet, they're saying, no, they're dispersing the crowd. But at the same time, we are provoking our students. And there is no way that when you are being provoked, you just keep quiet and do anything and do nothing. What has been happening there, it is something that has not been initiated by our own comrades on the ground, but the blame can be put to the university to say, why the university been able to allow security forces to shoot our students? The case that they've been mentioning, many of our comrades, in some point, one comrade was being shot by a rubber bullet. The case of one comrade from UKZN, who today was shot by the security forces there on campuses, no one has been able to account on that. So in essence is that at any given point in time, as students, we have never been violent in our nature. And whenever we start a protest unarmed. People who are armed are those security forces. When they shoot us, it is impossible for us not to respond to that. But at the same time, we're not saying we're encouraging violence in campus. When we start the protest, there is no way that we are encouraging violence. We have never encouraged violence, and even today, we're saying.
President Landla, can I stop you? Can I stop you right there for a second? Can I stop you right there for a second? I just want to play something we played yesterday. What happened in Braamfontein as Wits students were protesting. We'll play a few seconds of that. that you would all agree takes away from whatever legitimate grievances you have. Vesenhlanhla?
No, thanks once again, Bravo. You know, as I was saying, that in our nature as student leaders, is that there have never been violence. You know, it has always been a provocation from the side of securities. But at the same time, I said that we condemn any form of violence. You know, at some point, there are people who are coming to a protest with a different agenda. And we as leaders, we must be able to isolate those people, because at some point, they take away the legitimacy of why we're engaging on the mass action. So if there are elements that seek to delegitimize our program, which is a mass action, we must be able to condemn, and we must be able to isolate, because our main interest, remember, when we're engaging on a protest, it's not because we've decided today that tomorrow we're engaging in protest. It's the result of conversations between ourselves, the student leaders, SRCs and campuses, between management. If those discussions, they are unable to reach consensus, the only thing that we have, that we know that we're very powerful on, is that we can be able to engage on the protest. Because remember, we're young, energetic, and if management is unable to listen to us, we don't have a choice but to go on the street to raise our frustration. But in the main, it has never been about to say we're going to wake up tomorrow and we're going to ban the campus. It was never been like that. It has never been like that.
Your thoughts, Leonard, on the visuals we just played there?
No, thank you, viewer. Look, every day when there is a shutdown, I will tell you, there are always those people who are pushing their own agenda. That one we cannot run away from. So, but at the same time, look, the reason that we as students end up having a protest. Remember, the first approach that we do is to engage the university management on issues that are faced by students on the ground. Then we continuously engage management. If management becomes arrogant, or management does not respond to the issues, now we question to say, look, now we have exhausted all channels because the management of the university is refusing to listen, or they are becoming arrogant. Now, what is the next step? That's why then we end up saying, okay, look, let's go to a peaceful protest, and maybe the university will come to us and listen to us. What are our issues? So at the end of the day, then you find that there are those people who are not even students. Some of them, maybe they're not even from the same university. Then they come with a certain agenda of being violent and you know, damaging infrastructure, banning university. That one there's never been our call as an organization. Ours to say our rights to protest is what we are going to do, but at the end of the day, you're going to have people in the middle of the protest that they have other agendas, which you cannot identify that this individual has a certain agenda until you see the behavior as you have shown us on the feed. Thank you very much.
Sharona Patel, who's the spokesperson for Wits, Sandiso, reckons that there is more to these protests than meets the eye. Let's take a listen to what she had to say before you answer or respond.
Overnight on Wednesday, we suddenly see this change. And we can't help but think that it may be politically motivated. So it actually may not have anything to do with the students.
Your thoughts? What she just said? Politically motivated, nothing to do with students.
Yeah, I think she's speaking fiction, because you can't say it's politically motivated. There are student demands. At first, when you listen to that interview, she admits that there are genuine issues raised by students. So that is the core matter. So in their nature, matters which unresolved in these institutions, they are political. So, but you cannot say it's politically motivated. They are genuine issues which confront our students. When we say students are languishing in lecture halls, when we say students are not registered, When you say there is no proper accommodation and there is insufficient accommodation, so those are genuine issues and plights raised by the students and the EFF Students Command. So she's unreasonable. So we are confronted by these issues on the ground. So like we speak today, at this hour, many students in institutions of higher learning have not received their living allowances and food allowances. So how do you expect all things to be normal when students are supposed to go to this class and supposed to attend the lectures with empty stomachs? It's unscientific, wrong. So we must challenge the institutions. We must put pressure on NSFAS to sort and resolve all of these issues urgently. Because if they do not do so urgently, we are going to intensify on the ground until all students' issues are resolved on campuses. So there is nothing, students must not despair. They must go on the ground and support its structures when they are protesting on their demands. So which is unreasonable.
President Landler, I mean, do you not feel you have, as leaders, you have a responsibility to ensure that nothing takes away from your legitimate grievances, number one, but also that you have a responsibility to ensure that there are no threats to life and limb, but also to property. And having traveled this road, I mean, before, what do you think, or what becomes your responsibility in ensuring that your struggle remains legitimate, nothing takes away from it, but also you avoid situations like we saw in those visuals where people destroy property willy-nilly? Is there no way of ensuring that such incidents as the scenes we just saw don't get repeated?
Thanks once again, Bravo. We have a huge responsibility as leaders to ensure that the issues that are being raised by our students on the ground, they become legit. Because the moment you begin to have a situation where there are elements of violence outside the one that we were engaged on the mass action for, it's going to be a very difficult situation.
Leonard, same question to you, because you did say earlier that you rally behind behind students. You also said that the situation is as it is right now because universities and other people, your NSFASs or whoever isn't responsible for higher education, are not listening. But surely you also have a responsibility, as I was saying, or putting it to Vezintlantla as well, as leaders, to ensure that where things have a potential of getting out of hand, you must play your part in ensuring that there's no threat to life and limb and property.
Honestly speaking, as long as we are still utilizing the same funding model that we are having currently, that is being proposed by the high institutions, DHET, even next year, we are still going to sit here and discuss the same thing. I don't want to lie to you. We can play our role as leaders and try to maintain discipline. But sometimes, when students are frustrated, not because they want to, but because of, they are thinking about the families back home there. A student is being financially excluded, not because the student failed. The student did well academically. Now, second year, you find that this student has been excluded just because NSFAS failed to pay a debt. Or you find that the university financial aid failed to send a template to NSFAS. So I will say we can maintain or keep discipline or run away from these issues that have been faced. The ANC government needs to come up with a proper funding model that will be able to sustain the issues that we are facing on the ground. How long must we then, teenage student leaders, maintain discipline of these students? Because this thing, it has been happening the past 5 years, and it's going to continue happening even next year. So ours, obviously, will play a role to make sure that, yes, this thing doesn't come to violence and all those things. But how long must we, as student leaders, maintain this discipline when the architects of this funding crisis, they are not coming to play? Understand? So as long as we are still in this model that we are using, we are going to have this crisis even next year, even the coming year. Thank you.
Let's take the issue, Sandy, of the historical debt, registering for the year, what should or shouldn't be allowed, and so on. What if, and I'm saying this from someone who has no understanding really of how these issues work in very real and practical ways, where students are. What if you were to try and raise this with, say, the forum of vice chancellors, where there are broad guidelines without necessarily, anyone sort of prescribing to any institutions how they should do it, but at least so that there are broad sort of guidelines and there's an understanding, of the premise from which everyone moves, and try and somewhat find some common ground or sort of broad guidelines which would sort of narrow somewhat the scope for anyone to sort of exploit the situation. In other words, where students are disadvantaged on the one hand, and they don't get to continue with their studies, but on the other, it could well be because certain institutions are charging, exorbitant fees, or their processes and procedures unfair. In other words, maybe a mediated conversation around this thing, so that there's a common understanding and there are some sort of guidelines or parameters within which all institutions can really work. Is that impossible?
The historical debt issue, it's a very long-standing matter, and it has been raised for a number of years, and until today it's unresolved. Now, look, Vuyo, it's the arrogance of the university and the entire establishment. The ANC government, they cannot provide education. There is no will, but there is money in place, but there is no will. So we must force this government to inject more money, especially in the higher education sector and in the entire schooling sector. So there is nothing more you can speak. In the SRCs on campuses, the SRCs, particularly of the Students' Command, they raise these matters sharply in boardrooms. There has been engagements at the level, because all the SRC presidents, when they collude in the South, they raise in these issues. Now, remember, Vuyo, in January 25, the president of the EFF Students' Command, Komiza Loans, led a march to Union Building to demand the cancellation of all students' debt. Then he also, in that march, we also raised a number of issues that there must be an increase of allowances. Government must build more high institutions, especially accommodation, particularly in the Tibet side. So we have raised this number of issues. Subsequent to that march, there's never been a response. We gave them seven days to respond. They did not respond to our demands. So those are types of engagements we are doing on a daily basis. So on campuses, we have such engagements at a national level. We even met NSFAS to submit all of these issues, that you must look, as my learned friend of SASCO mentioned, that earlier you must check the demographics. So you must know that a student in UCT, looking at the environment, how much is supposed to pay. So we called a meeting with them, but the meeting did not yield any results. So those are kind of engagements we are making. But we are very happy that the EFF caucus in Parliament, in the National Assembly, were able to table a matter that all student debt must be cancelled. So the EFF is following on that matter. We hope the Parliament can be able to resolve such matters, because there is no way that the ANC will listen to us if we are not standing on our feet and fighting them.
I could ask a similar question, Evers Ntlantla, about, NSFAS versus, the 45,000 rands cap. I mean, is there no way of, sitting around the table, engaging, with NSFAS or even the Department of Higher Education as well, to sort of find some common ground or consensus around what informs that amount, and of course the dynamics all of you have actually, the dynamics on the ground that all of you have spoken about?
No, thanks once again, Bravo. We've been able to engage in as far as, like I said earlier on when we started the conversation, that our view as SASCO is that, one, NSFAS money must be treated fairly. Money of NSFAS must be able to pay for important things. NSFAS money is there to assist poor students. Number one, we must not allow a situation where private people are going to take advantage of the scheme. Because remember, this money is money from our parents, taxpayers' money. So how the money is spent is very much important. That is the first point. Number two, it is very much important for NSFAS to be able to understand geographical location when it comes to student accommodation. Because a room in Stellenbosch won't be the same as the room in Umlaas, like I said earlier on. So there must be some kind of a flexibility. But at the same time, we cannot say because the room in Stellenbosch costs 60,000 per annum and a room in Umlaas must also cost 67 per annum. There must be a way in terms of how can we manage that. Now, for that to be able to happen, we need to have NSFAS on board. We need to have student leaders on board. We need to have even universities on board and private people who own buildings, so that we are able to understand that out of everything that we are doing here, we are here to assist our students. We are not here to make exorbitant profit. Okay. We are not here to please some individuals. Yeah. We are here to assist a black child, a child that is suffering, so that tomorrow a future is better than today.
Gentlemen, let me thank all of you for agreeing to come on the program this evening, and we hope that indeed solutions will be found sooner rather than later without further risking life, limb and property. And that's our program for tonight and for this week. To join us again on Monday. Have a great weekend.